Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about avoiding being a me monster in sports.
Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Cameron, thank you so much for being with us today. Cameron's a comedian, former college athlete. We always love the episodes that you join us on the Sportlight podcast. Today we're going to start off with a fellow comedian of yours. That's Brian Regan, to introduce this concept of me monster. You ready?
Love this. Let's give it to him.
I'm actually kind of quiet off stage. A lot of people don't realize that. I was at a dinner party recently. A bunch of people that I don't know. One guy talking plenty for everybody. Me, myself, right? And then I, and then myself, and me. I couldn't tell this one about I because I was talking about myself, and then me. Beware the me monster. So I tried to jump in with a little story. I don't want to just sit there the whole night. Right when I'm done with my story, this guy goes, "That ain't nothing." Oh, well, didn't mean to waste everybody's time telling my nothing story. Here, let Marco Polo speak. He's back with tales of adventure. My story ain't nothing. Maybe it wasn't, because I made the mistake of trying to tell a story about having only 2 wisdom teeth pulled, and I learned a lesson. Don't ever try to tell a 2 wisdom tooth story, because you ain't going nowhere. The 4 wisdom teeth people are going to parachute in and cut you off at the pass. Halt with your 2 wisdom tooth tale. You will never complete one, trust me. I'm trying to tell my story. You know, I had some wisdom teeth pulled. I had 4 pulled. Oh, okay. No 5, no 9. I had 9 wisdom teeth pulled. All of mine were impacted. They were all coming upside down. The roots were wrapped around my tongue, coming out my nose. They were tusks. I was a warthog. No anesthesia. They pulled them out with pliers. I was eating corn on the cob that afternoon. Pin the blue ribbon upon his chest. That knocks the socks off of my wisdom tooth tail. Why do people need to top other people? I've never understood it, and I see it all the time. Obviously, people get something out of it. At best, people wait for your lips to stop. Yeah, as soon as... Okay, you, me! You, me! You see the difference? You see that? Now I do. What is it about the human condition? People get something out of that. That's why I have a social fantasy. I wish I was one of the 12 astronauts who have been on our moon. They must love knowing they can beat anybody's story whenever they want. They can sit back quietly at a dinner party while some other person, some me monster's doing his thing, and let him go. Let him run with the line while you be quiet. Oh, really? Let him have his moment. Yeah, I'm a big traveler. I have my business. I got my own global enterprise I got to check. And, driving in the Autobahn because I keep a fleet of sports cars over in Zurich. There's a Swiss account that I got to check. Mount Kilimanjaro expedition, might have to cancel that. Runways in Aspen are a lot shorter the first time you go in there. The Pacific Rim Company, we're going to try to take that over. Global enterprise. I walked on the moon. Well, you have the floor, Moonwalker. You know, you mentioned driving on the Autobahn. That reminded me. Once I was driving in the Sea of Tranquility in my lunar rover. And I, too, was worried about our speed till I remembered, wait, we're the only ones on the moon.
All right, Cam. Little Brian Regan to lead us off. So, Me Monster, first of all, as a fellow comedian, what do you think of Brian Regan?
I love him. I freaking think he's brilliant because all good comedians just take everyday observations, but he has an ability to just animate and create a story and paint a picture that's so vivid and so good. That is just one of my favorite clips of all time. Yeah. All time.
Because
everyone can relate to it. Everybody. Yep. Except for the Me Monsters. They're probably just sitting there like, I don't get it. Like, what? Like they just, or they're kind of like, yeah, I know a guy just like that. And everyone in the room was like, you're that guy.
Yeah. Or I would tell a story of a Me Monster I know, and they would say, that's nothing, dude. Let me tell you about this other guy.
This guy's even worse. And you're like, oh, you're doing it. Doing it. Stop.
So this leads into what I want to talk about today, kind of a lighter topic, but maybe something that we're seeing a little bit more of, in college with the NIL deals, and it's starting to be more about individual branding rather than it is about team. Even with all the recent changes in conferences and things, these alliances that used to be these forever cemented relationships are just treated like they're nothing anymore, and programs and universities are chasing that dollar, and I'm sure I don't even know how to feel about it, because I'm super happy that the school I cheer for got in a bigger conference and things like that, but it just seems like there's just all of this individualism going on. And so I thought it would be good to talk about, especially through the eyes of parents and youth sports, how do we not let that me monster mentality enter into our own children, and how do we teach them being a great teammate, all those things that are essential to life. So first of all, where do you see me monsterism in sports?
Well, so in the teams that I've coached, right, one of the things that we break down in film is anytime a kid is trying to do something that draws attention to himself versus when he's celebrating with his teammates, that's instantly called out and typically tried to kill. Because, for example, and everyone makes fun of the defensive backs in football. A ball could be overthrown by 5 yards to a receiver who's wide open, and the DB who's 6 yards away in coverage starts jumping around and doing the incomplete and starts pounding his chest. And you're like, bro, you were toasted by 6 yards and the quarterback just missed him. You should be like literally praying and saying, thank you, heaven, rather than running around pounding your chest, right? So, or kids that'll get up and they'll make a great play, and then they have to run away from their teammates to be able to celebrate and make sure everybody in the stands knows I made that play. And they're not even celebrating with their teammates. They're just sincerely trying to do whatever they can to draw attention to themselves and make sure the moment is about me rather than about us, right? And so we've always we highlight those in film, and we'll call them out, and we'll make fun of them, right? And to create a culture that just mocks those things rather than encourages those things. And then pretty soon kids get it and they realize, oh, okay, that's not cool here. Okay, never mind. I won't be that kid, that guy. Yeah. So that's we see that all the time.
Yeah, I think of that, especially the one you mentioned about running away from teammates to celebrate.
Oh, I hate it.
You see it all over the place, and it's just kind of this, no, don't all of you get near me yet. Like, I want the camera on me for a little bit. Yes. That's what it feels like. That might not be what's going through their head, but that's what it feels like.
Well, even if it's subconsciously, they're just pulling away from teammates to make sure they are, spotlighted, rather than just jumping up and then celebrating with the nearest teammate in kind of this pile of people. They're worried that in a pile of people, no one's going to notice that it was me. Yeah. Right. And you see it in basketball with game-winning shots, right? Kids running away from all their teammates and they jump on the table and they're pounding their chest and they're pointing at themselves and they're yelling at things. It's like, go celebrate with your teammates, man. Quit running away from them.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the DBs that are doing what they're doing. There's all these choreographed things that I'm starting to see that I swear in my life growing up. Now, I get that part of this is like two old guys talking about this, and some people might hear this. There's probably a line that's acceptable and then a line that's crossed, but I can't imagine hitting a home run and doing a choreographed bat flip and base run. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they have as I approach this base, I do this. And as I approach second base, I do this. The third base, I do the stutter step, act like I'm going to stop running, and then keep going.
Step slide.
Right. It's just like this choreographed thing. And then you have the 3-pointer now. It's like dance and basketball are mixing, right? Because there's this beautiful, choreographed something. They have to come up with their own thing to the student section. And I think, man, if we would have done those things, I honestly think I wouldn't play for like 4 games. And I don't even know if that's a good thing or a bad thing or whatever. I know my father would have killed me. And so, but when does it cross the line, Cam? Like, there's some good fun and games, and I know it's trickling down from the pros, right? You see all of this it's like you have to have your signature shimmy after every 3-pointer, and there's some like really good dudes doing that, and that trickles down through college and high school and into youth sports. And when would you say it crosses a line where you would address it as a parent?
Man, that's a great question. It's funny. I actually love the fun parts of sports. So let me give you an example. And kids just do what they see on TV, right? They want to, whatever they see on TV, they're going to mimic because that's what the pros do. And so I love that the NFL, for example, allows the players to celebrate. And I actually love it when they do a choreographed thing with the team. So they score a touchdown and all the offensive linemen run into the end zone and they all pretend like they're paddling in a boat or something like that, right?
Those are hilarious.
But they did it together as a team.
Yeah.
And like they involve the linemen and they recognize that that it was like a team accomplishment that we scored a touchdown. And so I think anytime you do something that draws attention to exclusively me is where I feel like it crosses that line, and it's becoming now about ego, and it's becoming about, satisfying that ego and having your moment rather than just truly recognizing that it took a lot of people to accomplish that. One of the things I despise in sports, and I've been really vocal about this, and it's become kind of a trendy thing, but one of the things I've just despised in sports is the turnover belt. So, for example, University of Miami started this, and when somebody would get a turnover, they would get the belt, right? And they show them on the sidelines, and they're wearing the belt, and they stand on the bleachers, and they show everybody, and they put the belt on because they got an interception, which to me is the most broken thing in sports. Because if you understand football, in order for that interception to happen, you go back and look at the replay. There was a defensive lineman who killed himself, split a double team to put enough pressure on that quarterback that he had to throw it prematurely. And the reason the quarterback had to throw it prematurely and throw it to that guy that was covered is because his first read wasn't open because the corner was doing an incredible job covering that guy. So there's like 5-6 different things and 11 guys that have to do their job in order for a turnover to happen. But because Steve happened to be in the right place at the right time and the ball falls in his lap, he gets the turnover belt or chain, and then they have this big moment and ceremony for him. And when it should be a team award and a team celebration. And so those, to me, when it separates from a team thing to a me thing, that's for me the line.
That's a great distinction, because I think it's so fun. Celebrating in sports is
the best
awesome.
part of it. Yeah.
I still remember one of the saddest moments in Little League Baseball. Did you play Little League Baseball growing up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I played to the ninth grade.
I don't know if you had this rule or if this was some California thing, but you couldn't touch a kid before he touched home plate. I don't know if you remember that at all, but I had a kid on my Little League Baseball team hit his first ever home run. his first ever home run, right? And you remember you got to collect the ball and you'd put it on your shelf and all that stuff, right?
Yep.
First ever home run, comes around third base. A teammate runs out and gives him a high five before he touches home plate, and the umpire calls him out. Right? So it wasn't a home run in the books.
Because Timmy
I
was so
remember all
excited
this
for the buddy.
drama. I remember all this drama. Like, that's okay. You can still keep your ball. You know, you can still do all this stuff.
It's not
And
a
it's
home
like,
run now.
I just look back. Who came up with that rule? You know, like who sat there and said, okay, now here's the situation. If a kid goes around third base and you touch him before he touches home plate, that violates some sacred rule of baseball, and therefore that kid is out. So that stuff I think is stupid. The natural celebration stuff that's about team, that's about excitement for what just happened, I think it's so dumb when that stuff is made to look silly, right? Or is penalized or is criticized. Kids need to have fun in sports. But I love what you've talked about is these things running away from team or standing on a table or doing whatever it is to make sure that your part of a given play is the one that's emphasized and it ignores everything else that happens. And I think that's a great distinction, something for parents to look for. Teach kids, celebrate with your team.
Totally. And even in basketball, right? Kid will hit a game-winning shot. And they'll run away and they'll pound their chest and whatever. And it's great. Good for him. He made this game-winning shot. But nobody saw that, you know, Steve pump faked, beat his defender, had to have somebody help him, makes a really tough pass to kick it to him in the corner, and had to do three incredible things in order for that shot to even, you know, that kid to be wide open.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of team sports is, you know, and some other kid set a screen for that kid to be, you know, there's so many things that have to happen in team sports for success, that to have a kid, you know, run away and just to be like, hey, this is my moment. I'm not trying to take moments away from kids. Let them have their moment. I love it in sports, like when they'll hit a big shot and they'll point at the kid who made the pass.
Yeah.
The first instinct, soccer does actually a pretty great job of that. They'll score a goal and there's an incredible pass and they'll point as they're celebrating and waiting for the guy that made the assist to come over and they'll celebrate together. But he'll draw attention to the person that passed. So the camera sees the guy that scored the goal or makes the basket pointing at the guy that made the pass. That says a lot about, I recognize that I only did that because of him. Right. And that's, I think, as parents and coaches, if you're teaching kids that, and that's their first reaction and not me pounding my chest and pointing to the name on the back or whatever, I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So let's go to another venue where I see this crop up, the meme monster stuff crop up every now and then. And that's the post-game interview. Oh. What thoughts do you have on meme monsters and post-game interview stuff?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when being humble was cool. Like, apparently that's no longer a thing now, right? And I get it. And I think here's where I think it's gone wrong is look at the NBA, for example. They incentivize guys that make all-star, like they make all-NBA, or if they win the Defensive Player of the Year award, they have the ability to make $100 million more in their contract.
Right.
So making these teams is massive. And so what's happened is they all self-promote in order to try to sway media and create buzz, say, oh, there's no question, I'm the best defensive player in the entire league. I mean, without a doubt. And their agents are chirping in their ear, telling them to say and do these things because they're financially motivated to do it. Well, kids watch this on TV and go, oh, I guess that's how it's done. I guess that's how it's supposed to work. And so now who's the kid that was just drafted in the NBA draft like a week ago? And he's like, LeBron's going to have to prove to me that he's better than me.
Is that the kid from Gonzaga?
No, it was, I want to say Illinois, but it was like the most absurd comment. And it's like, I get that you're wanting to, like, it's good to have confidence in yourself, but you just sound ridiculous. Like, have a level of respect as well and a little bit of humility. It's okay to be humble. It's still cool to be humble. But again, I think kids look at professional athletes as role models, and professional athletes have a different incentive to promote and to just constantly be like, absolutely, I'm the best center in the NBA. Absolutely, because they were trying to sway media votes.
Right.
Kids watch it and go, oh yeah, in sound clips, they're like, I think I'm one of the top point guards, in the country for recruiting right now. And, they'll kind of mask it in hashtag blessed that I'm a 5-star. I can't believe how, a humble brag, we call it. I'm so blessed and I can't believe now ... Let me just tell everybody what I just accomplished. Anyway, I think that's where it becomes really awkward and kids emulate it, and it becomes this self-promotion game of who can tout themselves, and look cool in the process.
Yeah. I brought up the kid from Gonzaga because I saw this post where someone posted, I feel bad for this kid because, I've watched him playing in the WCC and playing BYU right here. And I know this Chet Holmgren guy is going to be a good NBA player, right? But you could almost tell that he had been told, like you said, to say and do some things that he didn't feel comfortable doing. And so he comes up and he's like trying to, as they're interviewing him at the draft, and he's just kind of saying things that you could tell he was told to say. And anyway.
Yeah, this is the kid. It was Benedict Mathurin from Arizona. Quote, I don't think anybody is better than me. LeBron is going to have to show me he's better than me. What? Somebody's giving him some awful advice, right, and telling him, you want to come in with confidence and you want to come in with swagger, and you need to believe in your mind that you're the best in the world, and then you'll achieve that goal. You're young. No, you're just making yourself look foolish, and now you're going to be known forever as that guy. And when LeBron scores 40 on you, and you go 1 for 6 from the field, you're going to have this just eat crow the size of a vulture. It's just a bad idea. It's bad advice.
And like you brought up, nowadays it used to be that when we were coming up through high school sports and stuff, we didn't have a platform unless some newspaper contacted us and wanted to do an article, right?
And even then, nobody really read the newspaper, especially your friend.
I mean, you got to clip it and send it to your grandma. You go buy 4 or 5 copies and send them to a grandma and 2 aunts and uncles, and nowadays it's like they have this instant social media presence where those, I just received this offer, or I made this all city, all state, or whatever team, and just got selected for this traveling team, this AAU team, and they just have a platform, and then they watch that we never had. But then also it seems like pro athletes are conducting themselves in ways that we never saw. I mean, it was an anomaly when we saw that stuff. And so it's trickling down. And I guess the worry would be is if it becomes all about them, right? Because one of the greatest things that sports teach us is teamwork, working with other people, working through difficulty, working through failure. And if we're creating a culture where sports is teaching kids, no, it's about what you can get. It's all about you. It's about attracting attention to yourself. It's about getting yours. My experience has been that does not translate well. It might translate well to the NBA. It might translate well to an NIL deal or something like that in college. In the businesses that I've worked with and everything else, that will not transfer well to life.
Outside of sports, it does not have a place.
Yeah.
You don't have guys walking around. You want to give yourself a scarlet letter in business, walk around and start publicly saying, I'm the best salesperson in this company. There's nobody that can touch me. You do that, your managers can be like, oh, we got a guy who's not a team player. All of your peers are going to be like, this guy's a punk.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you'll ostracize yourself from the company culture, and they'll find a way to manage you out of the business. There's just no room for it. And so it just doesn't translate into the real world where hard work and humility still does matter a lot.
Well, and it definitely doesn't translate into the family atmosphere where,
Oh, no.
you know, if you could imagine that your family is all there just to be there for you. And I've seen situations like that, you know, where it just feels like there's a person and they are the sun and everything revolves around them. And it does not create a family life that's happy for your family members or for children or anything else. And so sports, the concern here is not, oh, this kid is celebrating. Oh, it's when it crosses the line to where it's all about me. Everything's about me. It's about how it affects me. Okay, we just won by 25 points. That's awesome. But I didn't get mine. Right. And it's when success, I love the quote, you're familiar with it too, I'm sure, but pride is saying that if you succeed, I fail. And when people begin to live their life that way, that the only successes that are important are my successes, not team successes, not family successes. Everything else is just, man, if the limelight's on you, I am a failure. If sports are treating our kids that is how life is, it could be super damaging to them as that spotlight turns off and as they move forward with their life.
You know, a couple of thoughts. One, I was talking with a former D1 coach, football coach, who's helping out a little bit with a high school program right now. And he was talking about how this team has just got absurd amount of talent, but they've probably underachieved a little bit. And one of the reasons they have is, he said, these kids are so consumed with all of their 7-on-7 teams and who's getting what scholarships and what offers, that the taking state is like the afterthought. Like they're consumed every day. He's like, and you hear it in their conversations and what they talk about. They are consumed every day with offers and stars and, you know, who got retweets and whatever. Nobody's talking about like taking state. We're going to win every game. Like it's morphed into this really, and it's seeping into the culture. And because a lot in the off season, there's a lot of 7-on-7 leagues, and there's a lot of other things that are all about scholarships and offers and tournaments. And it's not the days of like this cohesive team are slowly, you know, getting lost in just the pursuit of stars.
Huh.
And he's seen it firsthand, and it's palatable. And he said, you know, ultimately maybe the downfall of this team that is just, again, absurdly talented. But that's the cultural flaw right now in it. And he sees it and sniffs it out. And, you know, we've seen it together just in a lot of other schools as well. So it doesn't help this year-round stuff and all the non-high school stuff, the AAUs and the 7-on-7s and all the other things that are not directly related to the school itself. That's all that anybody cares about in those things is stars and offers and recruiting.
Right. And we're seeing it also in high school transfers and things like that, where it's almost like in some states where those rules are loose, kids start up, they grow up, there's a whole community invests all this time in their life. You know, they play pee-wee football, basketball, you know, junior jazz, all growing up. All these people invest so much, and then one kid starts to emerge, starts to grow, starts to be super talented, and then all of a sudden it's, boy, I wish you could play here. And you have parents moving or pretending to move or living with aunts and uncles who, you know, all those things. And it kind of loses that feeling of, man, I want to play for my hometown. I want to play with my buddies who I grew up with.
I spent 7 years playing through Little League with them.
Right.
But those loyalties are just killed, you know, in the pursuit of stars.
Yeah. And it's,
you know, it's interesting, Shad. We talk about like the me monster thing. I think there's a really subtle, dangerous me monster in parents that probably isn't maybe noticed as much. What's fun is you'll notice there's certain parents that find a way to steer every conversation back to their kids. Mm-hmm. They're pretty subtle about it. And it's kind of this, oh my gosh, how, and they're asking questions about, you know, how's Chad liking, the team? Good. And they're literally, their intention is just to be able to be, well, because Brandon, he's actually just looked at, he just had a phone call with a college or whatever the topic is with kids and athletics and activities and dance or whatever, they find a way to just steer it back to their kid, steer it back to a forum or a way where they can kind of brag or talk about their kid. And, what's funny is most of the time people notice this. Most of the time people know who these parents are, except these parents they think they're so crafty at it. They don't think anybody notices that they're steering it back to their kid all the time. And everybody else is like, oh my gosh, here we go. Yeah. You haven't asked one question about, you asked one question about my kid and you've spent 15 minutes talking about yours.
Right.
But it's all done with this really like, oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. Oh, this season's gonna be interesting. I've noticed with my kid, and they just are finding a way to make it about theirs.
Right.
That's the subtle, sneaky sniper me monster.
Yeah, it's almost like an us monster, right? This family, like it's all about the family, and sometimes that's true too, where a family, the name on the back of the jersey is way more important in sports. I know in life, the name on the back of a jersey is more, but in sports, it's like we want attention to that name, right?
Yes.
And bring honor to that name. And sometimes the thing that brings the most honor to a name is to be a great person, a great teammate. And when we focus so much on that bringing attention to our family or steering it, like you just talked about, to our own child, then that starts to teach those subtle things to our children. And it really is, I think, damaging in life. It really is.
I think one of my favorite quotes in the world is C.S. Lewis that says, true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And I think people think humility is like self-deprecating.
Yeah.
And in reality, humility is just, I don't care about talking about me. I'm more focused in you, and I'm more worried about how you're doing. I think people think, again, I know people that steer everything back to them, steer everything back to their kids. But it's like with this self-deprecating, look how humble I'm being. I'm just constantly, kind of making fun of myself. And you're like, yeah, but it's about yourself. You're still making everything about you.
Yeah.
True humility is thinking, not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
It's genuinely just going, I want to know how you're doing. I want to know how your kids are doing. And then when they ask, well, what about yours? Give them a quick little update. They're doing fine. And then it's back about, so tell me about you again.
Yeah.
That is, I think, true humility. And I think it's kind of a lost measurement.
I do too. In fact, you're reminding me of this speech. I want to have a blind react here. Okay. So I remember I watched, because I was a big, even though I grew up in LA, I really admired John Stockton, because he was a 6-foot white guy and I was a 6-foot white guy. If I had any hope of my dreams coming true, that's the dude I'm watching, I'm not. And so I just really admired him. And so I tuned in to watch the induction into the NBA Hall of Fame. And that particular year, I remember 3 of them, but it was John Stockton, Michael Jordan, and David Robinson. And I was so shocked by the difference in their speech. Now, Michael Jordan is an incredible basketball player, more than arguably, the greatest ever. Maybe one attribute that he got so many incredible attributes. Humility may not have been top on his attribute list, right? And I watched this mashup of his speech and David Robinson's speech. They talked about very similar topics. They talked about family. They talked about the organization they played for. They talked about their teammates. But just, I would love your reaction to this video. Okay, here we go.
Anyway.
So for those listening, it says Michael Jordan, David Robinson, 2 different players, 2 different perspectives. Both inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame and provided a speech. Both spoke about similar topics, but both had different viewpoints. Family.
Obviously, you see my kids, you guys had a heavy burden. I wouldn't want to be you guys if I had to, because of all the expectations that you have to deal with. I mean, look around you. They charge $1,000 tickets for this game, for this whole event. It used to be $200, but I paid it. I had no choice. I had a lot of family, a lot of friends I had to bring in. So thank you, Hall of Fame, for raising ticket price, I guess.
David Jr., my namesake, I'm very proud of you. I hope that this gives you something that you want to live up to, that makes you want to be proud of the Robinson name and to carry it on. And you're so intelligent, you're so wonderful, and I just want to say I love you. Corey, multi-talented, a man after God's own heart. And I love you, and I want to tell my son Justin, my youngest, he's my heart. He's always on my lap, always hanging on my neck. Brilliant, exciting, and a natural born leader. And I'm very proud of each one of you guys. And I hope this really makes you want to carry on the Robinson name.
Team staff and organization now.
Jerry's not here. Obviously, I don't know who invited him. I didn't, but he said organization wins championships. I said I didn't see organization playing with the flu in Utah. I didn't see him playing with the bad ankle. I think the players win the championship, and the organization have something to do with it. Don't get me wrong, but don't try to put the organization above the players, because at the end of the day, the players still got to go out there and perform. You guys got to pay us, but I still got to go out and play.
I want to thank the Spurs organization. They brought everybody out here, and I appreciate that. And I love you, Peter, Red McCombs, Angelo Drosos. Those guys were the masterminds of bringing me in, and they had more vision, more foresight than I did. So I want to thank you guys for that.
Teammates now.
I can remember a game coming off the basketball court, and we were down 5 to 10 points, and I go off about 25 points, and we come back and win the game. And we're walking off the floor, and Tex looked at me and said, there's no iron team. I said, Tex, it's not an iron team, but it's an iron win.
I want to thank all my teammates. Timmy, you're my man. Have any of you guys ever got on your knees and prayed really hard for something? That was my answer to prayer right there. One thing that I was thinking the other day about a story from the Bible is from Luke, the 17th chapter, and it was a story about 10 lepers that were healed by Jesus. And one of them came back, and one of them fell on his knees before him and said thank you, and honored him and blessed him. And I just want to say thank you. God has followed me in my career, and he has blessed me, and he has strengthened me, and he has encouraged me. And if anybody who knows me or anybody who has watched me, you have seen his hand in my life. And my prayer is that he will walk with you as he has walked with me all through my life.
Wow. That is stunning. I remember both of those speeches independently. And I think a lot of people were kind of shocked by Jordan's speech there, because that's usually the moment, the pinnacle moment of humility is the Hall of Fame, right? Where you look back and reflect on all of the people that got you there and all of the people, man, he still found a way to make it about himself. Even in that setting, he found a way to do it.
Well, and they left out the part that shocked me. When I was watching it, often the story is told about him getting cut as a sophomore from the varsity basketball team. He flew in the dude who made it over him to use him as an object lesson. He had him stand up and said, "This was the guy that made the team when I was cut. Coach, you made a bad mistake." Like, he flew in a high school friend to use him as an object lesson, and I mean, it was just so, I obviously never want to be too hard on someone, but when you see, David Robinson is the epitome of humility in that case, wants his kids. That was another one. You know, to look at your own kids and say, man, I would not want to be you, to have a father as amazing as me.
Like me.
Whoa.
Like me. And then I still had to pay for all the tickets. You know, it was expensive. So you're welcome. You know, but I bought them anyway.
And they're more expensive this year. Why? Because of me, right? And it's just like...
David Robinson just goes down the list and starts pointing out these qualities and attributes of each of his kids and how grateful he is to have them in their life. And you're just going... And now here's what's crazy. There's a lot of probably people out there, though, that would say, look, if Michael Jordan's a better basketball player than David Robinson, and that drive and that obsession is what made him great. And you're like, okay, maybe, but at what cost?
Yeah.
I mean, David Robinson is beloved as a person. There's a lot of people that don't like Michael Jordan as a person. You know, that's pretty well documented. And so, again, I guess you have to just choose what you want and what's most important to you. If what's most important to you is athletic success and getting 4 stars and getting a full ride scholarship, and we don't care at what cost we do it, okay. There's going to be a wake of reputation behind you that you've kind of dragged through the mud and destroyed, and relationships that you've burned, and people that you've had to take advantage or step on to get there. Is that worth it? And I guess it depends on what you value.
Yeah.
For me, that's not worth it, right? Grand scheme, big picture, not worth it. To others, it might be the most important thing in the world, and it is. I would hope, though, people would see the big picture and in the grand scheme of things and think that reputation matters. Impact on people's lives for good matters more than free school. Anyway, but
yeah. You know what we're all about here, and especially for athletes. We try to help people think outward, arrows out, eyes up, do the work. You know, I think David Robinson, we could just write a story about his life and it would make a great book for its support.
He's the poster child for, especially for athletes, right?
Right. And then you look at some of the Michael Jordan stuff, and I mean, you know, obviously a great player who helped people achieve great things. But sometimes it's like, I even hesitate sharing some Michael Jordan stories because I know the other stories that are out there. The good example stories, you always have to take the good and the bad, and each of us have good things and bad things. Work ethic, if we're talking work ethic, Michael Jordan. If we're talking drive, Michael Jordan. But if we're talking about not being a me monster, that's not Michael Jordan.
Competing without contempt.
Right.
Seeking to bless, not impress. That ain't Michael.
That's right. And so, you know, bringing it back to young kids, sometimes the concern is this, that there does seem to be that level of drive in the greatest ever, right? Where you are willing to leave your hometown and go combine with a bunch of people to try to win not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6 championships, you know, to quote someone who went down to Miami and did that, right? And so there's like this feeling of just what is best for me, and I get that at the professional level. Like, I really do get it at the professional level, because it's not like there's a ton of organizations out there that are being super loyal to people when they get a little bit over the hill or when they get injured and things like that. So it creates this dynamic at the pro level where I can see legitimate reasons why, hey, look, this organization's not willing to invest in order for me to accomplish my goals. I'm not just going to stay here and win them 50 games a year, and just because of my talent, when they aren't willing to put as much effort into their side of things as I'm putting into mine. Like, I get the professional side, but our kids are watching the professional side, and then they're taking those attitudes and they're applying them to youth sports, high school sports, and it's I think it is damaging at that level. Those attitudes are damaging at that level, and they're damaging in many other avenues of life outside of professional sports.
For sure. No question. I think that's an awesome point, Shad. And it's just a different context, and it doesn't, the rules are just different there.
Right.
But kids still are so easily influenced, and they idolize these people, right? And so they just, well, that's how it's done. I guess you're supposed to shoot the ball and then turn around and celebrate before the ball even goes in, because that's what Steph Curry does. Right. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter in the history of basketball, and he's it's well documented. He is a humble and great teammate. So you haven't proven that yet.
Right. And I think it's important then, kind of the to-do, we like to talk about that. Okay, so what? Kind of at the end of this episode. I think it may be that distinction between pro sports and amateur sports, which is being very much bled into by all this NIL deals. And now I've heard that there was a kid that signed an $8 million deal or something like that, and he's a junior in high school. So it's bleeding down further and further, but it's important to talk with our kids about those differences. And I really think they will be better served by us not teaching them to take the Michael Jordan mentality to life, but more the David Robinson mentality, to not be a me monster, to not have it be all about them. Because if they learn that in sports, just as we say, okay, if you learn work ethic in sports, that can translate to other areas of life. If you learn resiliency in sports, that can translate to other areas of life. Well, if you learn to be a me monster in sports, then you're going to be a me monster in your family, a me monster in your business. And this just might be one area where we definitely aren't saying, hey, kids, don't let your kids celebrate, don't let your kids have fun. But it might be an area where we want to have some conversations to make sure that they understand the value of life not being all about them, and that they'll keep their eyes up, looking for people who might need them, looking for people who deserve some praise, some lift, some credit, and that they will think outward and do the work to deliver that lift, that praise, that credit when they can. So, Cameron, any closing thoughts, man?
No, this has been an awesome topic. I freaking love it. And I hope coaches everywhere will break down the film, not only during the plays, but honestly, when they're breaking down film, break down the celebrations, break down the bench's reaction, break down the stuff away from the play that tells you a lot about the kids, and find opportunities to coach kids on how to be better teammates, how and where to celebrate. Where are you thinking about, what is your first instinct when something great happens? Is it about you or is it about the team? That stuff will translate. That will make you, like I said, more successful relationships, more successful at work. In the long term, that will be a massive win. So love this topic, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for your insights and thoughts. Hope you guys have an incredible continuing summer. And for everybody, thank you for tuning in today and listening to the Sportlight podcast. Please share this, listen to it with your kids, have a good discussion, keep your eyes up, and do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.